Welcome to the Wellness Realised podcast, where we discuss all things well-being related. I am your host and my name is Nadine McCabe, and I am the founder of EmpowerPlan, which is a unique and proactive well-being service provider for organisations and their employees. EmpowerPlan provides rapid, transformational therapy as well as standard counselling services for your staff. We also provide on-site, therapy-based well-being and development workshops, which are all inclusive and free to the organisations when they sign their employees up to an annual membership package. We are an EAP provider that is unique in our service offering and focus heavily on maintaining both mental and physical fitness of our members, whilst also developing life skills to enhance performance and prevent ill mental health. So thanks for joining us. Today we have got Liliana, who is our guest speaker for today. Hi Lily, welcome to the show and thanks for joining us. Do you want to tell our listeners a little bit about yourself, about what you do, and what brings you here today?
Hi Nadine, thank you very much for inviting me. My name is Liliana Myers, Lily, for people who work with me and who know me best. I am a hypnotherapist and a coach. I work with a lot of issues. One of the issues that I work with is also grief. I guess this is what we are going to be talking about today, about grief and how we handle grief.
It certainly is. So the grief, how would you define grief to anybody who's listening to this? What would you say your definition of that is?
I think there are many definitions about this word, but what I would say is the way our body and our mind processes a loss. It can be a loss of somebody close to us, so a loss of a parent, a loss of a friend, a loss of a family member, but it can also be loss of something that was familiar to us, loss of a situation, so like a status, loss of a job, loss of a home, loss of a relationship. So loss, in many forms of loss, yes, we are grieving. We are feeling that loss very deep inside. And the thing is that we have not been taught to deal with that kind of loss properly.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing that really, it's something that I don't think many people really think about when they're going through situations such as, like you've mentioned, losing their home or losing a job. They just think that they feel sad about that particular aspect, but not actually aware that the process that they're going to go through is the grieving process. So I think you're highlighting some quite important issues there.
Yeah, it also depends on the education we have been given. Because if we have not been taught that actually this kind of loss implies a process to accept, then it's very difficult for us to verbalize it as well.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to do the transition from a feeling that's inside of us, a feeling that's undefined, to something that's acceptance.
Yeah.
I will tell you what I was taught when I was small about grief. I grew up in Romania in a very rural area, and the way people were grieving there, their family loss, for example, it's sharing their feelings with the community. And that's a very important point. I remember when my grandfather passed, and back there you do the burial 3 days after the death, so you don't keep the body longer than that. That's it. It's 3 days. In those 3 days, the whole community comes together to help with the process. There's all sorts of steps, traditional steps that are followed in this process of grieving. Like the widow, for example, wears black, but the day of the burial, everybody else around wears that color, so that they show that they respect and they show that they care.
Yeah.
Also, there's paid wailers, or how would I describe them? 4 or 5 women in the village that are singing, crying and singing songs about the deceased life, about the achievements, about the good points in their lives. So it's like a story in a song, but that goes on and on the whole duration. And it's so much easier for the bereft to go through all the emotions when everybody is there, when everybody's sharing the same feelings.
Yeah. It sounds like a beautiful ceremony, to be fair.
Yes, it is, and it's very much the whole community involved in it. And after the burial, there's another thing that goes on, and that's the acceptance and the giving. So all the family and everybody goes back to the house of the deceased, and they celebrate. They celebrate with food, they celebrate with stories, they celebrate with actually with joy. So this is a way to make the transition between a really, really sad event like the burial into the new life of the person that has to live without the deceased.
Yeah.
So it's quite well thought out and beautiful. I was taught at an early age that grief has to be short, and after that you go on with your life.
How does that work then? Because people tend to grieve at different rates, don't they? So for those people that are not managing to go through that process of grieving in such a short space of time, if they're trying to be forced to go through that process much more quickly than they're ready, how will that make them feel?
Well, I think I was lucky to grow in a place like that kind of explained grieving in a different way. But society nowadays has developed in a way where grieving has not got much space. So people who are losing somebody who they love, they don't have much time to grieve, because they have to go back into the work field, they have to go on with their lives, they have to go back to their problems. And of course, the more you push down the feelings of loss, the more they affect your emotions, your internal state, and might end up even affecting your health.
Yeah, I know you mentioned there's certain steps that you tend to go through. I know in my personal experience, when I've suffered a loss and I've been grieving, when we've lost people that are close to us, that getting back into normality tends to bring about one of those processes, or in my experience, it does tend to bring about a certain level of anger to a certain degree, because you feel sort of resentful that you're having to go about your day without them. You're having to live your life and carry on as if nothing's changed, when everything around you's changed. Her whole world is different because that person isn't around anymore. And you tend to, I think, getting back into that normality tends to bring forward that step for me in that process. I hold a certain amount of resentment towards the fact I've got to carry on. Do you want to tell us a little bit about those steps and that process, and what's involved in that process of grief?
Well, yeah, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, she kind of defined back in the late 50s and 60s. She developed these 5 steps of grief by observing thousands and thousands of people that were going through this process. And the five steps that she defined are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Of course, this is not a recipe that everybody's following. People are grieving at different rates, in different ways. These steps, some people go through all of them. Some people go through these steps, but in different order. Most of the time, people who are grieving, they have to first acknowledge that feeling of loss. Mm-hmm. That is deep inside. And once they have managed to do that, it becomes much closer if they can define that feeling in words. Mm. So if they can put the feeling in words, they also activate a different part of their brain, the analytical brain, not the reptilian brain. And when they include that part of the analytical brain into defining into words, they process a little bit easier. So the feelings that you express in words become a little bit more easy to understand.
How would you encourage people to talk about their feelings about loss? If you'd got a friend who was going through the grieving process and you felt that they weren't accepting their feelings towards that loss, how would you actively encourage them to start talking about their feelings and open up a little bit? What sort of things would you say to them?
Well, first of all, I'm here for you. This is the first thing that I would say, the first thing that I've said to many of my friends as well. I'm here for you. If you need to talk, I'm here to listen. If you need to cry, this is my shoulder to cry on. I will help you go through this. I'm here, and I will hold your hand. And most of the times, people do open up when they feel that they have somebody close to them, when they feel that there's somebody who's ready there to share their feeling. Yes, it's not easy to open up, especially when there is rage, when there's that angry feeling that they've been left behind to cope with life without the deceased one, when they have to face life without them, when probably they are in certain situation. Most of the people, yes, they don't know how to cope. There's financial situations that they don't know how to manage, how to handle, and they are angry at the way that, all right, why am I not able to go through this? Why am I in this situation and I'm not able to cope? Angry with themselves for surviving, angry with themselves for maybe the last words they said to the deceased. Yeah, angry for a situation that had gone, that they think went wrong with the person that they lost. So they feel angry with themselves. Help them get rid of that anger. Understand that that anger is really not beneficial. Understand that there's nobody's fault that they are in that situation at that time.
I suppose it's giving them a safe space to express that anger, and then reasoning with that anger, and letting them know that it is part of the process, that it is what they are supposed to be feeling. They will feel angry, and it's okay at that point in time to have that feeling. And I suppose with any emotions, it's all about that acknowledgement of that emotion, rather than trying to ignore it and trying to say that somebody's wrong for feeling that way, and just supporting them through that process, and letting them know that it's okay to be feeling what they're feeling.
Yeah, that's completely true. Of course, grieving can be grieving for a situation, grieving for I worked in the past days with a client that was grieving for her youth. So there was a very traumatic event in her life in her early 30s that changed her life completely. And in her 50s, she just realized that there were triggers that, just watching something on the telly made her cry, and she couldn't understand why. And then, whilst talking to her, she started to understand where that was coming from. So there was grieving that she did not do at the right time. When she went through that situation, she told nobody. She shared that traumatic event with nobody. She kept it inside, and she bottled it up, thinking that it will pass. But 20 odd years later, it just came back in different forms, and it was triggered by a sentence that a character in a movie said. So yeah, grieving takes time.
And there's no set time, I suppose.
Yeah, and she was actually in need to grieve for the life that she might have had. And because of that traumatic event, she didn't have that life that was planned for her. It just turned completely in a different direction.
Must have been a very interesting session, and it must be so rewarding for you to be able to help people through that process and help them to find the process that they didn't even realize that they needed to go through.
Yeah, it's interesting that all this was started from just one sentence one evening in a movie, and she started to cry without even understanding why. And she wanted a little bit more information about that. She wanted to deal with that. Why was that happening? And I guess in the field that we are working in, we are kind of privileged to get into that insight, to get into that inner world of our clients, to get to the core of things, the programs that run their life without them even understanding or consciously processing.
Yeah. So was it a rapid transformational therapy session that you did with this client?
Yes, it was a rapid transformational session. We went to discover the reason why she was feeling what she was feeling. We went to understand what happened in the moment, and also to make her understand that it wasn't her fault. She had this feeling of being not worthy, that she never expressed to herself, she never acknowledged. She just went through life feeling not worthy.
Yeah, a lot of people, I know it's quite synonymous with quite a lot of people, this feeling of not being good enough in some way. We've all felt it at points, and I think so many people go through life not knowing that they've got that belief about themselves. They might think that they're confident, so they don't have that belief about themselves because they come across as being very confident. And it's not really until you actually tap into that subconscious that you really drill down to the limiting beliefs and how it's affecting their decisions and the way that they're acting. And people are quite surprised when they realize that they do hold that limiting belief. There's something that's happened within their life that's given them that feeling about themselves that they didn't even realize they had.
And what implication that feeling has in their life. Like this lady, she realized that she could not build her business up. She could something was stopping her, and that was the self-worth. She couldn't have a long-term relationship because of that lack of self-worth. And these things are so connected, but she did not realize where they were connected.
Yeah.
And finally, when she made that connection and she understood it, she just became free, and she understood that, oh my gosh, yes, there is a reason for this, a reason for that, a reason why I feel, think, act like this.
Yeah.
And when you get back to that initial thought of, I don't feel worthy, and the process why she thought that, we tweak that and we change that, we flip that, and it becomes easier once the understanding is done. It becomes much more easier to flip that.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's always amazed me how powerful the subconscious mind is, and the sheer fact that subconsciously we might think that we've got terrible memories, but your subconscious retains everything. It doesn't forget anything. It's all in there, but a lot of the time our conscious mind doesn't recall those memories, and it's when you actually put somebody into that hypnotic state, you can actually access those memories that they may have forgotten about. They may not even realize that they've happened, and it brings it all back whilst they're in that that hypnotic state. They can access those core memories that have been retained by the subconscious,
and it's a beautiful thing to witness.
Yeah,
as a facilitator, is a beautiful thing to witness.
Well, this client seems very lucky to have you to help them through that process, and to point out that to understand their grief and what they were going through, and to help them piece those puzzles together. In terms of grief, I know we've mentioned that grief can take different lengths of time for different people. We tend to go through stages in the grief process, like you've mentioned, those 5 stages, and then there's what people to refer to as mourning. So what's the difference between grief and mourning?
Well, grief is the feelings that we have. Mourning is kind of referring more to the process we're going through, what we do to help with our inner grieving. Like mourning, it could mean something like wearing a certain type of clothing. That's mourning. Mourning in crying. So the actions that we do to grieve for our loss, we do that through mourning. Um,
What actions can we take to help us deal with that grief process, to help us through each of those stages? What sort of things can we do to make ourselves feel better, or to get through those stages with a little bit more ease?
Well, one of the things that I always encourage my clients to do is just live in the moment. There is a very, very beautiful excerpt, one of my favorite books. I just have it here. It's Eckhart Tolle. And one of the things that he is talking about is the joy of being in the moment. Just acknowledge this moment when we are leaving, the moment that we are going through now, right now. Bring us back, center us back to this moment. And this helps us a lot with whatever is going around us and in our life. And he says, ask yourself, is there joy, ease, and lightness in what I am doing right now? Because if there isn't, then time is covering up the present moment, and life is perceived as a burden or a struggle. If there is no joy, ease, or lightness in what we are doing right now, in this moment, it does not necessarily mean that you need to change what you're doing. It may be sufficient to change the how you are doing the things. How is always more important than what. See if you can give much more attention to the doing than to the result of what you achieve through it. Give your full attention to whatever the moment presents. This implies that you also completely accept what is, because you cannot give your full attention to something and at the same time resist it. So just be present in the moment. Bring your thoughts back into this moment. Take a deep breath. And find joy in small things.
Yeah, I know, like, that mindfulness and that being present at all times, it is so rewarding. It can pull you out of a lot of low feelings, low moods. I know the sort of walking about in nature and being present in nature can help do that. Being sort of mindful of your surroundings, all the factors and things that you see in nature, the shapes and things, and just being aware of everything that you're surrounded by, and finding beauty in it. I mean, even if you're just walking past a little bush and you just look at a leaf, you can find beauty within that leaf. So if you really look hard enough, you can find some joy and some beauty even in the most normal of places.
Observe the environment. Yes, as you said, observe a beautiful leaf, the color, the veins in it, the form, the shape. Take pleasure in everything or find pleasure in things around. Talk to your friends, talk to your family, open up.
Sharing stories about somebody who's passed, or just remembering can help, can't it? When you surround yourself by people that also love that person, or also shared similar experiences to you.
It is very important to share the grief. You walk through it when you share it. You walk through it with, easier when there are people to share with. talking to people who know you and knew the person that you lost, can bring back beautiful memories, can bring back beautiful times of joy. So this process of remembering as well brings or makes the transition between grieving and joy. Find that connection between the person that was lost and the joy that he brought or they brought in their life, in your life.
It is useful to know as well, like if they're feeling very similar feelings to you and you're sharing how you feel, how sad you are, how it's making you feel that they're no longer there, and they sort of confirm that and are saying the same thing, that they're feeling the same thing, knowing that you're not going through that process alone just brings you such huge comfort at times like that.
Especially
when you're feeling strong emotions, especially
that this grieving can take so many forms, like physical forms, like changing in appetite, depression, nausea, overwhelm, or low energy, trouble concentrating. All these things point out that there is a deeper process going on, a deeper feeling going on that needs to come out.
So in terms of one of those steps for grief, I know you mentioned one of those steps being depression. Some people, has it been your experience where you found that you've had to help people who tend to get stuck in that particular step and that particular phase of grieving?
Yes, because they think life hasn't got sense anymore. Nothing makes sense. There's hopelessness. There's probably they don't know how to handle things on their own, and they can't find their inner resources to learn how to cope with it, and they just give in, and by not opening up to or not having any people around them to comfort them and to help them go through this, that makes things even worse. And of course, yes, there's different levels of depression as well. There's the level of depression where you're still functional, where you can go to work, but you still feel that way. And there's the depression where you physically cannot function. You're just numb and you can't function at all. You can't think, you can't eat. So it's that there's different levels in depression as well.
I suppose one of the other things that you might help people in terms of your therapy work with the grieving process is guilt. I know I've seen family members and friends who have lost people who are very close to them. They've lost fathers, they've lost mothers, they've lost siblings, and obviously they loved those people intensely. But yet when it came to their passing, they found that they couldn't cry, they couldn't grieve, and they carry a certain amount of guilt for not having expressed those emotions. And they tend to go through a phase of guilt to start with about that, and before they can even start to then let those emotions start flowing, they're having to deal with that guilt.
Yeah, that's true. And we do have, in the work that we do, we have a beautiful tool where we can facilitate a dialogue between the person who was grieving and the person who was lost. And that's such a beautiful tool where that dialogue can clear up so many things. So many unspoken words can be spoken. So many shared things can be unraveled, and it's really beautiful. It's very beautiful to see what comes up in terms of what does this person mean to you. What does this person what did this person facilitate in your life so that you're grieving so much? So clarify all these things and see and acknowledge where did the impact start, and where and what is left there to build upon. It's beautiful.
I suppose that part of it, if you were facilitating that conversation and that dialogue with a person in one of your therapy sessions, the science behind that is the mind doesn't really know it doesn't really care whether something is true or not, or real or not. So if your mind is having that dialogue and you're having that conversation with that person, as far as the mind is concerned, that person is there. And being able to say the words that you feel you wasn't able to say in their life can be very releasing, can't it, from a guilt perspective?
Yeah, it relieves the guilt, it relieves the sadness, it relieves a lot of internalized feelings that otherwise they don't know how to express. They don't have the words, because the person who they were addressed initially has disappeared. It's not there, or they never had the chance to express their feelings towards them, and now we facilitate that, and that's really beautiful.
Well, it all sounds absolutely fabulous, and the people that you are helping must just go out of your office just changed people and feeling so much more lighter for having come to see you in these dark moments within their life, and feel so much lighter for doing so. So thanks for joining us, Lily. Is there anything else you'd like to share on this topic before we depart ways? Anything you'd like to say to our listeners if they're currently experiencing a period of grief themselves? What advice would you give them right now?
Find a friend to talk to. Open up. Don't keep it inside, because the feelings that are kept inside, the tears that are not cried, they affect your internal organs. Let it out. Speak it. Put words on it. Because if you can put words on it, if you can express it in words, then it can be healed.
Some wise words there. Thank you very much for joining us, Lily, and hopefully we will have you on our show again very soon with some more wise words and topics to discuss.
Thank you very much for inviting me, and I'll come back with my pleasure.